So, since 2018 has now been over for a couple of weeks, I know I'm late with this video, don't blame me, blame the Grim Reaper, but since 2018 is over, I decided to do a video listing off my top 15 favorite films to come out last year. Now keep in mind, this is just my personal list, and there actually are quite a few films that came out last year that I really wanted to see but I didn't get a chance to see. Now, if you recognized some of the images that appeared in the thumbnail of this video, that will definitely give you some hints of what films are going to appear on this list. Number 15 on my list is Avengers Infinity War. Now, personally, I'm a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is funny because when it comes to the comics, I'm much more of a DC person than a Marvel person, but I genuinely have been enjoying this series ever since it started. Sure, some of the films have certainly been better than others, but I definitely think this is one of the best installments of this franchise. And one of this movie's main strengths is definitely the main villain, Thanos, who's a character who's been built up ever since the first Avengers movie. And I think this movie really does make Thanos a surprisingly three-dimensional character where I don't want to say you necessarily sympathize with him, but you almost understand from his point of view why he's doing what he's doing. And I was somewhat surprised with how dark the ending was. Granted, you know it's going to be remedied in the next movie, but I'm definitely interested to see where they go from here. Number 14 is Overlord, which was a really fun Nazi zombie movie that felt like a real throwback to Nazi-sploitation films, and it succeeded at being not just a really good horror film, but also a really good war film as well. And the movie has a very likable cast of characters, and there is something very nice and very soothing about seeing Nazis get blown the fuck up. My only issue with the film is there were some definite historical inaccuracies, and yeah, I know, nobody's going into a Nazi zombie movie expecting it to be historically accurate, but in the film you follow a squad of soldiers who are both white and black, and I know black men did serve in the Second World War, but people could correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm pretty sure white soldiers and black soldiers weren't serving together in like the same squadrons. So there is some historical inaccuracies there. At the same time, though, you could argue that the film is set in maybe an alternate universe where that was allowed. And it does seem like, cinematically, the film is trying to combine elements of both World War II movies and Vietnam movies. But historical inaccuracies aside, I really did enjoy the hell out of Overlord, and I highly recommend it. Number 13 is Upgrade, which is a futuristic revenge film that is almost like a darker, more fucked up version of Hardcore Henry. And the movie's a great mix between science fiction, action, and horror. I know some people might debate the horror part. I think the movie definitely has, at the very least, horror elements. And the film has a very likable and sympathetic main character who you're definitely rooting for him to get revenge throughout the film. At the same time, though, you see the toll that his revenge and the technology that's allowing him to get the revenge is taking on him, and the film has an almost Rod Serling-esque twist. But yeah, highly recommend Upgrade. Number 12 on my list is SpiderMan Into the SpiderVerse, which is a great kids film that adults could very much enjoy as well, and if you're a Spider-Man fan, you'll definitely get a kick out of this. And the movie's funny as hell, but also has a lot of heart, and has some genuinely pretty touching moments. And Miles Morales is a great character, and I think it was really brave to have a Spider-Man movie where Peter Parker really isn't the main focus. I mean, Peter Parker's in the film, but this is really Miles' movie. And Wilson Fisk is the main villain of the film, but very much like what they did with Thanos in Infinity War, Wilson Fisk in this movie is a very three-dimensional character where you don't really sympathize with him, but you do sort of understand his motivations throughout the film. Number 11 on my list is A Quiet Place, which I thought was a really well-made and really suspenseful sci-fi horror film with a lot of character drama as well. And John Krasinski did a great job not just at directing the film, but also starring in the film, and he gives a really powerful performance. So does Emily Blunt, and the kids also did a really good job in this movie as well. Number 10 on my list is Black Panther, which I definitely think is the best of the 3 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies to come out this year, and I think this is definitely one of the best films of this franchise. Now, I'll admit, story-wise and plot-wise, the film does hit a lot of the same beats as a lot of the films in this series, but what definitely elevates this film is some of the themes in it about race and even about xenophobia to a certain extent. And this movie's biggest strength was definitely the main villain, Killmonger. Like, Marvel's been doing a really good job with villains this year, but Killmonger is actually a very sympathetic character, who, while he's the bad guy in the movie, you do understand to a certain extent where he's coming from. And Michael B. Jordan really did kind of steal this movie from the rest of the cast. Number 9 on my list is quite a bit different from the other films you've seen on this list so far. The other movies were very mainstream. This is a little less mainstream, but number 9 on my list is Lars von Trier's most recent film, The House That Jack Built. The film's very much in the same vein as other serial killer dramas like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer and American Psycho, but this movie's done in a very sort of artsy way. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Lars von Trier. They consider him to be very pretentious, and I'm not going to pretend the film's not pretentious, but to be honest, that really doesn't bother me that much. The only point in the movie where I was like, okay, calm down, Von Trier, is when it started playing scenes from some of his other movies. But The House That Jack Built is a very disturbing but surprisingly funny film with a lot of deeper themes, and I would really like to do a standalone review on this movie at some point because there is a lot to talk about with this film, and there are a lot of deeper themes that Von Trier is going for with this. But this is a movie I can only recommend to certain people. This is definitely not a movie for everybody, and I actually got a chance to see the uncut version of this film. I also loved how the film was, in essence, kind of an adaptation of Dante's Inferno, and Virgil is actually a speaking character in the movie. Number 8 on my list is Suspiria, which is a remake of the Dario Argento film of the same name. I absolutely loved this movie. Now, I'm a huge fan of the original Suspiria, but this movie very much went off in its own direction and dealt with its own themes. But to be honest, I think the film's better for it. I really appreciated that this was not a carbon copy of the original, and I also really appreciated how this movie didn't feel like a cash-in on the original. Like, the director of this film really did set out to make his own movie and make a damn good movie that just happened to be inspired by the Dario Argento film. And Tilda Swinton gave a hell of a performance in this film, especially considering that she played 3 separate characters in this movie. Number 7 on my list is Annihilation, which I think is definitely the most underrated film to come out in 2018. And this is not just one of the best science fiction films in recent years, but one of the best horror films in recent years as well. And this is a terrifying movie. And throughout the film, you get this real sense of almost apocalyptic dread. And the film's also very Lovecraftian as well. And that fucking bear. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The bear scene is one of the most terrifying scenes I've seen in any horror film. Number 6 on my list is Klansmen, Spike Lee's most recent film, which, while being based on a true story and being set in the early 1970s, the film's very much meant to reflect things that are going on today. And I will say the film does get very preachy towards the end, but it wasn't enough to kill the movie for me. It's a really powerful film about race relations in the 1970s, but it's also a really suspenseful cop thriller about 2 cops, one white and one black, who are trying to infiltrate the KKK. But the movie's also really funny as well, and has some interesting callbacks to blaxploitation films of the 1970s. Sorry about the dramatic change in location. I intended on finishing this video where I was recording it last night, but I didn't have enough time, so I'm just recording the rest of it here. But again, I hope the change in location isn't too jarring. But now on to my top 5 favorite films of 2018. Number 5 on this list is Mandy, which is an action horror film that really does blur the line between exploitation filmmaking and art house filmmaking. And this is definitely one of the most wild films I've seen in the past few years. It's a revenge film, but it's also a cult film, and I don't mean cult as in it has a cult following, I mean cult as in there's an actual cult in the movie. It's also sort of a surrealist film, and there are supernatural elements in the movie, but the supernatural elements, you're not sure, like, how much of it is real and how much of it is just hallucination. But this is a fantastic film, and Nicolas Cage gives a hell of a performance in this. And his performance is over the top, but given what happens to his character in this movie, you perfectly understand why he's acting so over the top. And Linus Roach, who plays the main villain of the film, maybe it's just me, but it really felt like he was channeling Richard Lynch in his performance. There was something about his performance, and even about the way he looked in the movie, that reminded me of a young Richard Lynch. Number 4 on my list is Hereditary, which in my opinion is the best horror film to come out in 2018, and one of the best horror films in recent years. Now, there is one other movie on this list that I do think has some horror elements, but that other movie I would not call a full-fledged horror film. As far as full-fledged horror films are concerned, this is definitely the best one to come out last year. But while it is a horror film, it's also very much a drama film as well, and the movie's creepy as hell, but it's also about this family's grief. Number 3 on my list is Boy Erased, which is such a powerful and emotionally moving film. The movie's about a young man who's gay who comes out to his parents, who are deeply religious. His father is actually a pastor, and needless to say, his parents do not handle this well, especially his father. And his father ends up sending him to this, like, conversion therapy group where they try to convert him and other gay kids into being straight. And the movie's based on a true story, which makes it even more outrageous. And the movie's really about this kid having to stand up to these people saying, look, I'm gay and there's nothing you can do about it, and I don't think God loves me any less. And it's also about him standing up to his parents and his parents reconciling their faith, but also their love for their son. And the movie's written and directed by Joel Edgerton, who is not just a great actor, but between this and The Gift, he's definitely becoming one of my favorite writers and directors. And the movie has some powerful performances from Nicole Kidman, who plays the main character's mother, and Russell Crowe, who plays the main character's father, and Lucas Hedges, who plays the main character. The movie also has a really disturbing rape scene in it, and it's not disturbing because it's graphic, because it really isn't graphic at all. It's disturbing because of the tone of the scene, and also because when I first saw the movie, I didn't realize what was going on at first in that scene, and when I did, I was like, oh fuck. It was like a freaking gut punch. But yeah, I highly recommend Boy Erased. Number 2 on my list is Sorry to Bother You, which is one of the most brilliant and subversive films I think I've ever seen. It's a dystopian film, it's a science fiction film, it's a political and social satire, and it's a black comedy, and the film's funny as hell, but it's making some really serious points about society. And the movie starts off where it seems like it's a movie about race inequality, but really what it's about is class inequality, which is something that affects all races in my opinion. And I was not expecting some of the directions that this movie took. I knew it was going to have science fiction elements, but I didn't realize it was going to go there, because there are actually, even though I wouldn't consider this a full-fledged horror film, there are actually some elements of the body horror genre. And number one on my list of my top 15 favorite films of 2018 is If Beale Street Could Talk. It's from the director of Moonlight, another movie I absolutely loved. The film is set in the early 1970s, but a lot of the social issues that the movie is trying to touch on are still very much relevant today. The film very much touches on race inequality, but also corruption in the justice system. But above all of that, it's also a really powerful love story, and in my opinion, it's the best film of 2018. Keep in mind, that's just my opinion, and also keep in mind that there were several movies that came out last year that I really wanted to see, but I didn't get a chance to, so for all I know, maybe there was another movie of 2018 that I would have liked even better than If Beale Street Could Talk, but of the movies I have seen, If Beale Street Could Talk was my personal favorite. Before I end this video, I just want to name off a few honorable mentions, movies that I really liked that came out last year that just didn't make the list. And those honorable mentions would be Game Night, Deadpool 2, Sicario 2, Incredibles 2, Halloween, and mid-90s. So, those were my favorite films of 2018. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my choices, and let me know what some of your favorite films of 2018 were.